prison is so haunted that even Al Capone said he experienced paranormal activity here. This is the Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia.
Hello everyone, my name is Lisa and today's topic is the Eastern State Penitentiary. And very quickly, before I get into the spooky videos, this is what I have for the mukbang portion of today's video. I have some bulldog stir-fried ramen. Looks like this. Added cheese and all that kind of stuff too. Along with it, I have some mozzarella sticks. Okay. And then a side of kimchi. And of course, some milk. Because I think this flavor is gonna be pretty spicy for me. And then for a dessert, some cherry chocolate cupcake M&Ms. So here we go. Go get a spicy snack and let's get into the spooky videos. And again, today's topic is the Eastern State Penitentiary. Okay, first video.
Eastern State Penitentiary is a building of significant history and hauntings. Nearly 200 years ago, this penitentiary was built with a new, more humane form of imprisonment in mind, but the torture that ensued within its walls seems to have gone far beyond what was intended. Today, many believe that the spirits of those who lived and worked beyond this castle-like facade still roam. Let's make some tea, and I'll tell you about it. Around the time the U.S. was being formed by our founders, prison reform was on the minds of those in Philadelphia. Rather than one large holding cell for men, women, and children alike, the Philadelphia Society for Alleviating the Miseries of Public Prisons thought up a new way for the incarcerated to spend their time. They believed that penitence would be a better way to rehabilitate the inmates and would be better for society as a whole. But this penitence would require constant silence and solitary confinement. Prisoners here at Eastern State would be subjected to years of total solitude, driving some mad, and those who refused to stay silent were shown other methods of punishment, like the water bath, where rule breakers would be dipped in water and left outside in the cold until a layer of ice formed over their skin, or worse, in my opinion, the iron gag that forced inmates to remain completely still and quiet lest they wished to lose their tongue. All of this agony experienced by the men and women who were sent here is thought to be one of the reasons it remains so haunted today. Employees, inmates, visitors, and volunteers have witnessed shadowy figures running through the corridors and heard footsteps in empty cells as far back as the 1940s. But there is one story that I think tops them all. Caretaker Gary Johnson was working on the old locks and cell block floor one afternoon in the 1990s. He had just gotten one unlocked and opened when he claimed he felt a force grip him tightly. He couldn't move. He couldn't release himself from whatever was holding on to him. He panicked, and he knew he was being watched. Quote, "I had this feeling that I was being watched real intensely. I turned and I'm looking down the block and I know there's nobody there. A couple of seconds later and I get the same feeling. I'm really being watched. I turn around and I look down the block and I don't see anything. As I start to turn down the block, this black shadow just leapt across." He claimed to have had visions of ghostly, tormented faces across the cell wall. They seemed to be calling out to him for help. And he isn't the only one who's seen this shadow lurking in cell block floor. Now, the history of Eastern State Penitentiary is so interesting, and there are many more hauntings that we could talk about, like the supposed encounter by Al Capone, who stayed here in the late 1920s. So if you'd like to hear more, you can check out our full episode on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Stay spooky and be kind.
Alright, next video.
Not gonna lie, this might be one of the most violently haunted places in the United States. This is Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia, and it was built in 1829. It was built for total isolation, and inmates spent years in total silence. One of the most active cell blocks is cell block 12. Guards heard laughing coming from empty cells, and paranormal investigators captured crying, shadow figures, and voices. In cell block 4, shadow figures are caught crawling across the floor and the walls. People feel hands grabbing their ankles, and people just run out in pure terror. I used to have a friend who worked here for the haunted house, and he said he was completely terrified to be upstairs alone by himself. He said that he saw a man and he was hearing voices behind him. But the scariest spot is the old death row corridor. Visitors report a choking sensation and an intense pressure on their chest, and full-bodied apparitions standing in front of them. Staff members refuse to work on their own because they will hear doors slam, footsteps chasing them, and people screaming when nothing is there. This place doesn't feel abandoned, it feels occupied. Would you spend one night alone in this prison in total isolation? If you've had an experience here or you've been here, leave a comment down below. I want to know.
Okay, write me a comment. Have you ever been to the Eastern State Penitentiary?
Hello, Megan here with US Ghost Adventures, and welcome back to part 2 at Eastern State Penitentiary. Today we're taking a closer look at some of the prison's most notorious inmates and the crimes that brought them here. One of the most well-known was Al Capone, who was arrested in Philadelphia in 1929 for carrying a concealed, unlicensed firearm. He served about 8 months at Eastern State in a surprisingly comfortable cell with rugs, lamps, and a radio. Another infamous inmate who also stayed in cell block 7 was Slick Willie Sutton, the legendary bank robber known for his clever escapes. Sutton spent 11 years here and even helped dig a long tunnel beneath cell block 7 in one of the prison's most famous escape attempts. But not all inmates were human. Pep the dog, often called Pep the cat murdering dog, was sent here in 1924 after being accused of killing the governor's cat. While the story became famous, Pep was likely innocent and was actually sent to the prison as a mascot to help boost inmate morale. His mugshot and inmate number remain some of Eastern State's most talked about artifacts. Would you visit the cells where these stories unfolded? Comment below and follow US Ghost Adventures for part 3.
So this is one of my favorite artifacts. It is a cutlery set that a prisoner made from the bones in his soup. So it's chicken, pork, or beef bones, we don't really know. And they were sold to make some money at the penitentiary.
My favorite artifact at Eastern State is this. It's something you might have missed as you walk by the cell blocks. This is horsehair, part of the plaster. Horsehair was often used in plaster to make it a little bit more strong, give it a little bit more oomph. But don't worry, no horses were harmed in the making of this plaster. Just needed a couple haircuts.
Hi, my name is Matt Murphy. I'm the tour program supervisor at Eastern State. We're in the Eastern State Archives. My favorite artifact is the death ledger. The death ledger recorded all deaths at Eastern State from 1830 to 1936, and it tells us a lot about what they thought was important here at Eastern State. We see the prisoner's number. Importantly, all the prisoners were split by race, either black or white, their age at death, and we can also see some of the common causes of death, notably tuberculosis. Overwhelmingly, the number one cause of death. There's a dozen different ways to describe different forms of tuberculosis, like phthisis or scrofula, consumption, congestion of the lungs. We also see more intense ways to die, like murder, suicide, unfortunately. And we also have this open up to the year 1882 because there's a bit of a mystery on this page. Number 9998, who died at the age of 39, a man by the name of Charles Card. If you look carefully, you can see in the note somebody erased the words "not dead," and then a little bit closer to the margin, "escaped in coffin." And then the date of his discharge, which usually means the day he died, is also scribbled out. Later records show that he was discharged with a description of being paralyzed on one side. So what it seems like happened is that he may have had a stroke and then was interpreted as being dead and was maybe in the process of being brought out of the building in a coffin and may have come to and then recovered and then did more time and was released. So death ledger is a treasure trove to us, and that's why it's my favorite artifact.
The Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia is not like any other prison. It is where some evil history, some madness, and the supernatural collide. Let's talk about it. Okay, so the Eastern State Penitentiary opened in 1829, and it was the first solitary prison to implement confinement on a massive scale. Prisoners were isolated 24 hours a day without human contact. They slept alone, they ate alone, they sat alone in their cell, and when they were outside of their cell, they were forced to wear hoods to limit human interaction, which is absolutely insane to me. This kind of isolation was made for prisoners to repent for their crimes, but it did absolutely nothing but break them down. Prisoners would start going mad, and they would get so frustrated and lonely that they would scratch their cell walls until their fingernails bled, and they also started hearing sounds. The Eastern State Penitentiary was built off of the philosophy that the mind could be corrected through hardcore isolation, but in reality, it became a place where people's spirits were trapped. The prison's isolation and harsh punishments made an energy that was so dark that it never left the prison when they closed in 1971. People who still visit the building today say that they went through some very strange occurrences, and a lot of people say that it is the sad souls of the people who are still trapped inside of the prison. Visitors and staff alike have reported to see shadowy figures and to hear lots of footsteps, only to turn around and see that nothing was behind them the whole time. And then there's the soft whispers that many people have reported in Subblock 12. A lot of people have said that this particular whisper just calls your name when you're alone in the hallway, which is freaking terrifying. One of the most haunted places in that prison is cell block 12 in particular, and a lot of people say that when they enter that cell block, such a negative, heavy presence overcomes them, and they have literally left the prison feeling sick because of it. Many people who have visited have reported unexplained chills, nausea, and handprints and scratch marks on their shoulders and back afterwards leaving the prison. Even notorious criminals that were held at that prison were not immune to the prison's hauntings. Al Capone was famously incarcerated there, and he always said that he was haunted by a man that he had murdered prior to being at the prison, and a lot of the guards that worked there reported that they literally heard Al Capone screaming in terror in the middle of the night because of it. There's also a ton of history of visitors leaving this facility, claiming that they felt like something or someone followed them home after visiting this place, which is literally freaking terrifying. I can't even imagine going through that. I think I would go mentally insane. Ghost hunters and paranormal shows have investigated this place over the years, and the stories that they have collected are absolutely terrifying. Most of them have actually reported feeling watched, like something or someone is there, just out of the sight of the eye. But the scariest thing is that the prison might not just be haunted by the spirits of the prisoners. Some believe that the building is haunted itself by all of the dark energy and the horrendous things that have happened there.
YouTuber Prosperous uploaded this clip to the site way back in June 2006, and many believe it to be some of the strongest evidence of the existence of ghosts to date. The footage is said to have been captured by the Atlantic Paranormal Society while they were investigating the Eastern State Penitentiary in Pennsylvania, a prison often thought to be haunted. Although the clip is brief, it does appear to show some sort of hooded figure walking towards the camera. It then looks as though the figure notices that it's being filmed and quickly moves away. As the Eastern State Penitentiary is often reported to be a hotbed for supernatural activity, many paranormal researchers believe that the figure seen in this video is indeed a ghost, and some have even likened its appearance to the Grim Reaper. So what do you think? Does this creepy clip actually show proof of a ghost roaming this haunted prison? Or is there another explanation for the mysterious figure?
But we haven't explored the right side of it. Like, there's more tunnels that we haven't seen yet. Like, there's a lot more to check out. What is that? There's a snake.
Let's explore one of Pennsylvania's most historical and haunted locations, Eastern State Penitentiary. A lot of the criminals used to call it the Pen. Eastern State actually opened its doors in 1829, and the prison was designed to hold 253 prisoners, each of them occupying a solitary confinement cell for their entire sentence. This is actually meant to help criminals find penance, remorse, and salvation. For a lot of these prisoners, it actually drove them insane. Again, if you're an introvert, that'd be great, right? I would highly recommend that you take the audio tour as it's narrated by the Steve Buscemi. For the opening of Eastern State prisons were nothing more than just holding pens for unwanted corrupt men, women, and children who were housed alongside petty criminals and violent killers. So in walks in the Philadelphia Society for Alleviating the Miseries of Public Prisons, led by founding father Benjamin Franklin, who worked to transform these wasted prisons into facilities that fostered reform. So in 1822, the construction of this prison began, and it was major and it was expensive, as you can see in this model here. Of course, this prison was going to be equipped with vaulted ceilings and skylights to let in a God's light in each cell, which was equipped with a toilet, running water, heat, and a Bible. After its completion, more than 300 prisons all over the world copied its designs, systems, and even practices. Now for its haunted history. Prison has seen a slew of inmates who either died by taking their own life or by old age, and a few guards have lost their lives within the walls. Those who have visited or even investigated this location have claimed to see ghostly faces through the cells, shadowy figures, and even full apparitions of inmates. Actually, one inmate in particular, and that is Al Capone. Yes, the Chicago gangster actually served time here from 1929 to 1930 for carrying a concealed deadly weapon. The cell was the nicest cell, with furnishings of a desk lamp, paintings, and cabinet radio, and quite possibly a ghost. You see, Capone complained that he was being haunted by James Clark, one of the victims of the St. Valentine's Day massacre in Chicago. Now it's Capone that people believe haunts his cell. If you're ever in the Philadelphia area, I highly recommend that you do visit Eastern State Pen during the day, or if you're brave enough, at night. Haunted and weird.
This prison is so haunted that even Al Capone said he experienced paranormal activity here. This is the Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia. It was built in 1829, and when it was first built, it was considered a little lavish for a prison. One of the reasons being that each inmate had their own cell that was centrally heated and had running water, but that was part of their punishment. See, this is the first prison to use solitary confinement as a punishment. They did everything that they could to keep the prisoners isolated. They even made this mask so that inmates would have to wear it so they wouldn't be able to see or talk to any other inmates if they did have to leave their cell. The guards even wore fabric on their shoes so that you wouldn't be able to hear them coming. One inmate did try and talk to his neighbor, and he got the iron gag. The iron gag was one of the very horrible ways that they would use to punish their inmates. Notorious criminals such as Al Capone and Willie Sutton did time here. This is Al Capone's cell. Just thought that I'd throw in that there was even a dog that was sentenced to life here for trying to kill the governor's cat. So Al Capone himself said that when he stayed here, he experienced some paranormal activity. He believed that James Jimmy Clark, a victim of the St. Valentine's massacre, had come to haunt him, and he would apparently scream at night begging Jimmy to stop harassing him. Once he left the prison, he even hired a medium because of this. So it closed in 1971 and then was abandoned until 1994 when it reopened as a historical site for visitors to come and see. That's where the haunting stuff comes in. People say that you can hear phantom screams coming from inside this place. People have been tapped on the shoulder by something imaginary. People say that you can hear demonic cackles coming from certain cells, specifically cell block 12. Doors can be heard opening and closing on their own, and these are heavy ass doors. It's not just wind from a window, you know? People report seeing dark silhouettes. This guy named Gary was working at the penitentiary as a locksmith when they were like going to reopen it so that people could come visit it. So he was working on a cell block and then got an overwhelming feeling that he was being watched. And so he looked up from what he was doing. He saw a dark shadow just like walk by the wall. So he goes to another cell. He opens the door to do some work. He's greeted by a rush of cold air and says that he saw faces of tortured souls on the wall. Of course, this man thinks that this place is very haunted. I mean, if what he saw was true, that's just terrifying. Like I said, this place is open to be visited. Have you been here? And if you have, did you experience anything? And if you didn't, would you visit this place? Follow for more spooky content. I will see you in my next video. Goodbye.
Extremely creepy.
The Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania has widely been considered one of the most haunted locations in all of the United States. This penitentiary was completed in 1836 and was considered state-of-the-art at the time. It even had plumbing before the White House did. But treatment of prisoners was considered to some to be cruel and unusual. There was no human connection for the prisoners and no interaction with anyone when you were in this prison. In order to be fed, they had feed slots, and they would just deposit basically your food into these feed slots, and that's how you got your food. Guards would even wear fabric on their feet so that their footsteps were silent. If they were allowed to leave their prison cell, then they had to wear masks that basically blinded them. There was no connection from home. You weren't allowed to get letters or anything. Now, the solitary confinement aspect of this would change in the 20th century, but this didn't mean that prisoners were treated any better. If prisoners acted out, then guards would tie them to a mad chair and leave them there for days. If they went on, they would dunk them in freezing water and then leave them out to freeze, basically. This went on for 142 years, and the Eastern State Penitentiary finally closed its doors in 1971, and that's when it was added to the National Registry of Historic Places. Since then, it's become a popular tourist spot, and many people think that there's a very dark energy that lingers in this prison. Al Capone was one of its most infamous prisoners, and he said that he would often be visited by some of the victims of his Valentine's Day massacre. But visitors to this day report seeing shadows, hearing giggling, and running through the halls. Like, they just claim that this place is super haunted. Many people have heard others crying, and there is no source that it's coming from. It just seems like an invisible figure is crying somewhere in the prison. They've also been touched by cold hands, and nobody's there. Many ghost hunters have also gone through the prison and claim to have found other things, but what are your thoughts? Do you think it's actually haunted, or is it all just a trick of the mind? And would you go visit this place? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and follow for more spooky things.
Okay, one more video for today.
Famous Eastern State Penitentiary. Once housed Al Capone. This is actually my second trip here. Another famous location. Far too many cells for me to actually get an actual picture or photo. Photo request. Another hot day. Something else I failed to get the last time I was here was the chaplain's office, which is currently closed. My goodness, this is anyone's footage. I can imagine how many people needed this place. A trip down Eastern State Penitentiary. Here's the part where you can actually see everything. So I actually always come in here and get a little spin. just giving it a little light. And trust me when I tell you, it's pitch dark in there. Cells here feel the most creepiest. Just a little silhouette head office. I'm actually looking. Down cell block 10. This is the famous barbershop. Just imagine how many heads got cut in this chair.
Okay, thank you very much for joining me today. Again, write me a comment. Have you ever been to the Eastern State Penitentiary? Do you think it's haunted? Would you ever stay there overnight? I personally think it's haunted given the history that it has. Thank you again for joining me today. Stay spooky, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!